John, we're going to be talking today about how what you don't see can get you killed. How are you, John?
I am well. How are you, Jason?
I'm well. No rioting in Thailand?
No, but it appears that they are protesting in Japan,
Yeah.
and I found that fascinating. So, yeah, I think what I wanted to talk about in this week's show are some of the things that people are not being shown. Um, we're seeing certain things in the news, right? And I uh, get an opportunity to sort of get the highlights from the various news broadcasts and see what's being covered. And certainly since last week's show, quite a bit has happened, right? So we've had last week, in fact, or if you're looking at my channel, what was the show we did a week ago today? What were we covering? I think
Uh,
we went into the Who, right? We did the Who, and we looked at who's keeping tabs on the Who
oh,
and the
right.
fact that
Exactly. Won't get
the
fooled
world,
again. That was a
right?
funny
Because
one.
the World Health Organization effectively had stopped reporting on influenza in a number of European countries at the same time that New Jersey, New York, Michigan stopped reporting on influenza. And I think over the course of the last couple months, as this coronavirus thing has captured, everybody's attention, we've been trying to put it together, figure out what's really happening here. Because again, what we're seeing, there's too much cognitive dissonance, right? It started when you were out on the streets and things just weren't adding up. Uh, in particular, I got to watch a couple of your broadcasts where you were walking by Jacob Javits Center. And one of the things that struck me was we just didn't see a whole lot of patients coming in and out of Jacob Javits Center. And yet, after they folded it up and put it away, the claim was that 1,100 people were treated there.
It's very difficult to
1,100,
believe.
1,100 people is a lot of beds. And originally, we were told that it wasn't for coronavirus patients. Same with
Well, that
the
was the
boat.
boat that was supposed to be not for corona. I thought the hospital at the Javits was always for overflow.
Overflow. All right. So, and this is an important distinction that the one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago, I believe, is that Javits wasn't the only field hospital. There were a
Right.
number of field hospitals that were built in major cities. And in fact, I think there were 36 or 37 of them that were built around the country, eight of them in California, one in Seattle, Houston, Chicago, Miami. They're all over the country. And they were all built where the community was told these are not for coronavirus patients. These are for hospital overflow in the event of, right? So they were not for coronavirus patients, and most, if not all, never really treated any coronavirus patients. And so there was so much cognitive dissonance going on between you, me, the rest of the folks who were researching this. Something seemed wrong. And when we got into the influenza reporting and the fact that certain states had stopped reporting on influenza and there was a major outbreak, that was starting to look a little bit weird. Well, where are we now? Where are we today? Well, according to the CDC's Flu View interactive system, which is the system I've been getting all the mortality data from, we're now at over 165,000 people dead from influenza this season, and we're at about 108,000 dead from coronavirus, according to the CDC and the Johns Hopkins map. Now, a lot of the stuff that's taken place in the last week or 10 days with the rioting and all that has shifted the news cycle away from
Yeah.
coronavirus. And rather than the reporting on hydroxychloroquine and the effectiveness of it and things like that, and the fact that somehow, I guess, a vaccine has come to market, this hasn't been in the news as a result of these protests. And so in the last week, I did two of these new hypothetically speaking podcasts that I've been doing.
Right.
And hypothetically speaking is a format that I'm using to try and avoid having the channel taken down by YouTube because I don't deliver news, right? This is not news. What we deliver here is opinion-based journalism that could be wrong, right? So when we speak hypothetically, we're coming up with hypotheses and we could be wrong. So one of the podcasts I did this week is why is America burning? What is going on here? And certainly we have seen, the tragedy. Uh, Effectively, we watched a murder take place on camera,
Yeah.
and it's brutal, it's tragic, and it's happening across the country. I spent a good part of the week this week looking at footage of police officers effectively overextending their authority, pulling people out of cars. I saw a woman tased in her car in Atlanta this week. So,
Ooh.
yeah, I mean, just bad stuff, man. It's bad. And I think the issue here is, n number of bad cops make all the good cops look compromised, and it's a real shame. I've got a number of friends who are great cops. I don't know that I know any bad cops, but I know there are bad cops, and I'm watching footage of it, and it's very disturbing. It's really disturbing. And again, I don't know if you've ever been manhandled by the police or the military, but shortly after I moved to Thailand, there was a coup d'état, and the military took over control in Thailand. In
Wow. I didn't know that.
fact, in fact, when you and I were driving through the jungle together and
That
we
I know.
got to that stop, all right,
Yeah.
so okay, so when we got to that checkpoint, so for the
But they
audience who
didn't
doesn't know,
they didn't bother us really. They just
that's because I showed them a badge,
true.
is why they bother us. They had us get out of the car.
Yeah.
So we were driving through the jungle. Jason was visiting me in Thailand. And as we were driving through the jungle, I was showing one of the more scenic routes. We came up upon a road stop, and the road stop was being managed by both police and military. And in Thailand right now, the military is in control, and the police report to the military.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so Prayut Chan-o-cha, who is the prime minister, was the general in charge, and now he is the prime minister.
Hmm.
So this was a big deal. And the military came in and cleaned house, and there was a whole bunch of corruption. And we saw the military, like if you went to pay your electric bill or you went to pay your water bill, you would see people in army uniforms behind the desk, making sure there's no
Wow.
graft and stuff going on. It was really kind of interesting. So the police report to the army in Thailand. So any kind of graft and stuff that was going on, the army steps in, and these guys just basically took charge of everything. And at the time that it happened, people were getting killed in Bangkok.
Wow.
Red shirts and yellow shirts were shooting, and the hand grenades and all that. And Prayut Chan-o-cha comes in, military takes over, and it was a bloodless coup d'état. Nobody was killed, nobody was shot. The army took over, and no one was killed. And he has been, routing out corruption for quite some time now. And I believe he was elected prime minister. So uh, it's a different kind of thing. But one of the things that is interesting in Thailand that I really started to think about when I've been reading some of these things online that people were saying about the president. And I don't know if you or the audience are familiar with the term less majest. Have you
Never
heard of
heard
that?
it.
Less.
Nope.
All right. So less majest. I think it's a French term. Lese Majeste. Less majest. And the less majest laws in
We're
Thailand.
definitely pronouncing it wrong.
Me? Oh
Both
well,
of us.
yeah,
Lese
yeah. I'm not a.
Majesté is probably something closer.
Okay, so somebody could please don't make too much fun of me as I'm butchering the French language. Je ne parle pas bien français. So, less majest are rules about insulting the monarchy.
Right.
If you were to say about the king of Thailand the things that the press says about the president of the United States,
You'd be
you're
killed.
looking at 3 to 15 years in prison.
Okay, well, not good.
All right. Right. And people are arrested for this for posting things on Facebook. So if you post something that's critical of the king or any of the royals, in fact, king, queen, etc., the rules are insulting, defaming, or threatening. Now, if you threaten the president, the Secret Service is going to show up at your house,
Not unless you're
ask him.
Madonna.
Or Eminem.
or
They showed up
that
in Eminem's
redhead
house.
comedian lady. What's
Oh,
her name?
her. Yeah, well, she probably,
Kathy
yeah, I
Griffith.
don't know. Yeah, she used to date the other guy from Apple. She was dating Wozniak for a while,
Oh yeah.
but I think he got married. But if you threaten the president, the Secret Service shows up. If you threaten the king of Thailand, you do 15 years in prison. But if you insult or defame the king, you're facing 3 to 15,
Hmm.
right? And and they take it seriously. It's considered the strongest, less majestic laws in the world. And when you're in Thailand, you just don't speak poorly of the royals. Nobody does. Regardless of how they feel, nobody says anything badly about the royals. And the disrespect that I'm seeing paid to this president is stunning to me. It's not just that it seems to me that they disrespect the president, they're disrespecting the office of the presidency. And the people that I know personally who have more liberal views maybe than I do, I think are all suffering from something that we have talked about on this show, which is availability heuristic bias, which is you don't have the facts. You don't know what is in this man's morning briefing. You don't know what the Joint Chiefs are sharing with him, and yet you're quick to criticize. We talked about on this show the morning of March 13th and what happened potentially, hypothetically. Did the Joint Chiefs come and tell the President of the United States, sir, we've got a risk that we need to do something about? Because the President declared a state of emergency in all 50 states on Friday, March 13th, when there were 204 people dead from coronavirus. We started building field hospitals. The field hospitals were up and running by April 26th, and they began taking them down on May the 1st. Was this for a respiratory infection? I don't think it was, right? So when you don't have all the facts, you can't do deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning has to go out the window. And that's where we start to use inductive reasoning again. And inductive reasoning is not 100%. Inductive reasoning only is going to get us close enough. And so this is where we use this method to build a hypothesis of what may have been happening, given that we don't get to see all of the information. Inductive reasoning. 36 field hospitals were built. They were standing for 10 days. Then they were taken down. Not one of them treated a coronavirus patient. Even though they claim they did, you're not going to see photographs of more than 20 patients in a hospital. Those photos don't exist. You may see one or two for a photo op, but you're not going to see a photo with rows and rows of people. It doesn't exist. So the question is, why did that happen? Why did we shut down air travel? Was all of this for coronavirus or not? There are things that you haven't seen, potentially. Some of the audience has seen it, some of the audience hasn't. When we get to our patron-only hour on Patreon and Subscribestar in about 15 minutes, what we're going to be showing the audience is evidence. Evidence that was probably shown to the president back in March. And this is why the world got locked down, not coronavirus. What we've talked about regarding coronavirus is that in China, there's fewer people dead than New Jersey.
Yeah.
In Vietnam.
And I've been to both of those places.
That's right. And in Vietnam, no one's dead. And in Cambodia, no one is dead. And in Laos, no one is dead. And the population in Thailand is about the same as France. France has 29,000 dead. Thailand has less than 60. How do you explain that? It's not that easy to explain, right? China shares a border with Mongolia, shares a border with Laos, shares a border with Vietnam. No one's dead in any of those countries. And with less than 60 dead in Thailand and 29,000 dead in France, and Thailand and France have the same population, that's where cognitive dissonance kicks in.
I got to
And
imagine
this
there's a lot more
is,
people traveling from China to Thailand than there are from China to France in any given week prior to the coronavirus.
and the
Actually, I
first
think we
coronavirus.
read that the largest Chinese diaspora in the world is in Thailand.
That's correct. And the first case outside of China that was identified in Thailand. And yet,
Right.
60 people were dead. And the number of cases, even in Thailand, there's fewer cases in Thailand than New Jersey. So it just doesn't make any sense. And so that's how this investigation began. And when you look at all of a sudden the news cycle completely gets hijacked. The entire news cycle in the course of the last week or 10 days was completely hijacked. And everybody now is talking about the protests. Now, again, what we watched happen to George Floyd was tragic, right? Everybody watched it. It's horrifying. And it's not the only case. There's lots of other situations that are similarly tragic. I don't think there's a single person that thinks, that this is something that we, advocate or, it's okay. So everybody's upset about it. The cop who did it is being prosecuted for murder.
Yeah.
The other three cops are being prosecuted for aiding and abetting.
Yeah.
So it's
Sounds
being
like
taken
we're on the
serious.
road to justice with that.
Right. So justice sounds like it's probably going to be served. The protests that we're seeing, here's the thing, here's the part that people aren't going to see. This is what we're going to look at this when we get to the patron only subscribe star hour. You're seeing all the protests in the United States. Why are they protesting in Chile?
Yeah.
Why are they protesting in Peru?
Germany.
Why are they protesting in Germany, in Brazil, in Japan, Switzerland? There are so many protests going on around the world right now. My hypothesis in the podcast that I put together earlier this week, you're coming up on 110,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'm coming up on 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. Between the two of us, that's 140,000 people that subscribe to our publications, the work that we do.
Yeah.
Do you think you and I could pull together a demonstration like what you've seen in any one of these cities?
No,
And you've
certainly
got
not.
reach. Jason, you've got over 100,000 subscribers. I've got 30,000. There's no way we could pull together any kind of demonstration of any one of these sizes,
No.
let alone in multiple countries on the same weekend. Now, when you go to Italy, the
Good point.
protests weren't about George Floyd. They were about abortion rights and pharmaceuticals. Ooh. And the protests in Turkey weren't about George Floyd. Something else in Turkey. So based on the locale, the topic of the protests differed slightly. But it all took place on the same weekend. Who has the ability to coordinate so many of these protests? And then the thing with the bricks, right? I watched you call the Acme Brick Company, right?
Yeah.
We saw the Acme bricks in Frisco, Texas. The town is
Right.
called Frisco, right? So we saw that. We saw you call the Acme Brick Company. And yet we saw other bricks in other cities on pallets. It's all over YouTube. There's bricks everywhere. All right. So who's buying the bricks? I refuse to accept or believe that Black Lives Matter are buying bricks. I'm watching peaceful protests. And then it appears that these Antifa thugs show up at nighttime, grab bricks and crowbars and break and, kick off the looting and get that fire started. And so I have to wonder who's behind this and what kind of resources. And to tell you the truth, I'm wondering if even somebody like a George Soros could pull this off himself. It's so broad. There's so many protests going on. So I put together that podcast earlier this week, looking at protests around the world, looking at these bricks, and then looking at these men in black, most of whom appear to be white men, breaking everything.
Yep.
with hoods you can't see their faces, but it appears like these are white men
Yeah.
breaking things. Who
Coronavirus
were the guy?
masks.
Yeah, who are the guys dressed in black in that SUV in Washington that sent the guy into the protest and said he was with CNN? Who are these people? Who's funding this? Is this organic? Is this spontaneous?
Oh, I saw
These
that in
protest.
your video where the guy walked up to them and asked if they were cops. And he said
That's
that they
right.
were from CNN, and they said, no, we're not. And he's like, okay, your friend just lied to me.
Exactly. So this is happening in Japan. It's happening in Turkey. It's happening in Italy. It's happening in Greece. They're demonstrating in Syria. That's all. I'm supposed to believe that's all organic. I'm supposed to believe that that's all spontaneous.
No, it's a good
Uh,
question, John, and we're going to be delving into that in less than 10 minutes when we transition over to the sponsor exclusive segment on patreon.com/I am John Cullen and subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen, and of course also on the Crowdsource the Truth channels. Before we go there and delve
mhm,
into some greater depth on this, it's interesting. This picture that I just showed earlier from the New York Times. This is
mhm,
a bunch of protesters who have assembled near the site where George Floyd was killed. And other people have
mhm,
brought up the fact that this speedway back here has diesel at 99 cents. Now,
mhm,
I got to presume that the sign must be broken because people have been doing all kinds of investigations of this price, that it's changing or
mhm,
something like that. But I don't think they could possibly be selling diesel for 99 cents a gallon or any fuel for 99 cents a gallon. Here's the top 10 lowest gas prices in all of Minnesota. And, Costco and Sam's Club, these are these places that you have to join and pay a monthly fee, which in part helps them lower the fuel
mhm.
prices. Speedway is just a regular gas station. It's not a buyer's club of any kind. So I'm
Hmm.
surprised that this says 99 cents.
Bizarre. No, that is weird.
Yeah.
I don't know
But
what to make
anyway,
of that. I don't know what to make of that.
we can continue to
But
look
I
into
do.
that.
Well, there's also in the thumbnail, people are probably wondering, well, what's all the other stuff in the thumbnail?
All right.
Well, one of the other internet publishers, and this is what we're going to get into when we get into the Patreon hour, um, Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge frequently will report on things that you and Michael Moore have already reported on and not acknowledge it. And it appears that they've done something similar again.
Huh.
So if you go to Zero Hedge's, I guess it was June 2nd report, the title of the report is Pandemic, Economic Crash, Social Unrest, and Now for Asteroids. So it sounds like maybe Zero Hedge is starting to pay attention and is starting to watch Crowdsource the Truth even more frequently,
Yeah.
not just the stuff that you're doing with Michael Moore. So this coverage is addressing four asteroids. The problem is that Tyler Durden, the author of this article, once again is being fooled by the illusion that is being presented by the media. The asteroids they're talking about here are millions of miles away.
Oh.
The asteroids that we talk about are between us and the moon. There's a
Huh.
big difference. There's a very big difference. It's the difference between going to the zoo and seeing a lion and having a lion walk up next to your car. It's a big difference.
But what is this? Talking about 2.9 miles. That's like you could walk there.
2.9 million miles. M.
Right. The M. I missed the M. Oh, so these are quite close. 310,000.
310,000, I still think that's more than 1 LD. 1 LD is a lunar distance. Lunar distance is about a quarter of a million miles, 250,000. So 310,000 miles is more than the distance to the moon. These are not threats. I want to talk about 2020 JJ. 2020 JJ is within 5,000 miles. All right, so that's what I mean. When you talk about asteroids, they're 3 million miles away. They're calling attention away from the actual problem. The actual problem are the asteroids that are 5,000 miles away, 12,000, 24,000.
Yeah.
Our satellites orbit at 24,000 miles, 20 to 24,000 miles. So when an asteroid passes within 5,000 miles, that's problematic. That can start taking out our satellite systems. It could take out navigation
Elon
systems.
Musk's new spaceship.
He just put 60 satellites up this week, by the way.
Yeah.
Elon Musk put 60
Busy as
satellites
hell. It's too bad he can't run for president.
Yeah, he's I like his attitude. He
I do
doesn't
too.
take a whole
People
lot of nonsense.
don't like
Yeah, he
Elon
doesn't.
Musk. But
Nonsense.
John, we've got a break
so
here because we've got to make the
indeed.
transition over to
So here's what we're going to
Patreon
look
and
at.
Subscribestar.
When
We got
we
a break.
get over there, here's what we're going to do. We're going to review the numbers on coronavirus and influenza. It's important to look at both. Where do we stand right now? We're going to look at these protests that are taking place in bizarre places, and we're going to look at what is happening with these near Earth objects. The last time we visited was about a month ago. And a month ago, it appeared that most of the danger was already gone. Well, a month later, we go look at the system, and that wasn't necessarily the case. So tonight, when we go patron only, we're going to look at some new Jet Propulsion Laboratory simulations showing near Earth objects. We're going to tally up the coronavirus and influenza deaths, and we're going to hold the CDC accountable. Dr. Fauci's hiding, but he can't run.
He's running, but he can't hide. And we'll explore
No,
that
he's
further.
hiding, but I'm going to catch him. I don't care how fast he is. We're going to catch him. He can hide all he wants.
All right, we'll see everybody in just 2 minutes on Patreon and Subscribestar. Join us there. Thanks for watching, everybody.